Hi everyone, this is Lila'Angelique with another time-lapse process art video for you. This whole experience for me took about a little under a month to do, and I never have a clear idea of what I want to do with each piece. I don't prepare beforehand. It's an experience of having an image in my head of kind of a vague idea of what I'm going to want to create. And with this one, I had the intention of creating faces for the first time. I've been drawing for quite a long time, probably at least over 20 years, but drawing on paper is very different from painting on canvas. I find myself very naturally attuned to canvas painting. I fell into it very naturally and comfortably. But with this one, it's going to be the first time that I've ever actually painted faces. And my intention was also to challenge myself to do something larger than I've done before, and to use references and try to replicate the references as best I can, which was definitely a big challenge because I'd never painted a reference before. I've definitely drawn a lot of references, but each one of the references or pictures that I've ever drawn before were never this large. I never took up this much space on a canvas before with one image. So I found myself through the whole process resisting it, and it was really, to be honest, it was quite uncomfortable because I was very much not liking the fact that the images were so big, if that makes any sense. Because up until this point, I've never done anything so large before. And if I'd been even more brave, I probably would have made each of the faces a bit bigger, or maybe made one face to take up the entire canvas. But I'll probably eventually do that. This was just my first step into creating, like really giving myself time to focus on one image for a long period of time. And it took a long time. This particular image took maybe a week to get it right, and getting the colors right was also a challenge because I'm looking at a reference and I'm trying to replicate the colors as best I can. And that is not an easy process, because there are a lot more colors in an image than you initially see when you're an artist and when you're focused on color and trying to replicate colors. It's you see how many colors are actually within one image. It was also something, a lot of resistance in me to, like I said, to focus on one image because I'm used to creating a lot of small images within a large piece. And because that gives me a lot of joy generally to create a lot of different images and focusing on different images. But myself, for me, dedicating my time to making one image look the way I want it to, was quite interesting for me, and I ended up being extremely pleased. But there was a point in which I had to stop actually during this whole painting process. This one was this particular face was not as challenging for some reason. It was the next face that I did that was much harder, and I think it was probably because I spent so much time on that face to the left that once I got it into a position that I liked so much, that I was very much comparing the face to the right to it and wanting them both to look really good, you know. And I'm generally a major perfectionist when it comes to art, so I it was definitely hard. And namely with painting faces, there's a challenge about getting each part of the face in the right place, because, for example, I had to erase that eye and start again and move it to a different place. And I tend to get really focused on the details first before I will step back and look and see if it's in the right place. So thankfully with this mouth that wasn't the case. I was dedicatedly plugging away at getting it right. And thankfully it was in the correct position. Because I've had experiences like you'll later see with that face on the right. I definitely struggled for a very, very long time with getting the facial features correct. And for the whole time, Thoth was definitely saying to me that there's no right or wrong way of doing this. You can do it however you want to. Um, you can be more experimental. You don't have to be so precise about the whole thing. But for me, I was really keen on getting everything right before I started really having fun with it. And I'm really proud of myself for doing that, because in the end it looked, all the facial features were correct. And this eye, once I got this eye right, and I got the eyelashes and this beautiful image of the iris peeking underneath the beautiful pinkish white eyelashes, I was so happy. I was so happy with this. It At this moment it really started to look like an actual eye, like an actual face. And I was feeling more confident also, because like I said, I think this one image maybe took me 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, to actually get it to this point. And that was, it was challenging. And there was a point in which I darkened the face, and I didn't really like that so much, and I wasn't sure how to change it, how to get it right. And I lightened it again, and which it later actually turned out really well, because that face on the left was ended up kind of looking like it was glowing from behind, which I really loved. And that was completely not intentional. But this process here of getting to the point where the face on the left looks really good, and then I hadn't done any work on the face to the right, that's a major challenge with drawing. The experience of having been working on one image really diligently for a long time, because painting takes longer than anything else. Painting takes longer than drawing. It takes longer than anything. Colors take a long time to actually set, and you have to build layers and all of that, and it takes longer. I've been surprised how much longer painting takes than other art forms I've done. So once I was working on this face on the right, I was quite judgmental of how amateurish it looked, and it took me a long time to get the perspective right and the features in the right place. I think I worked on it for over a week before I realized that for example, the nose and the mouth were in the wrong position. And that was, I mean, you can just see it in looking at that. The face on the left, the face on the right. The face on the left is very finished. It looks good. And then this face on the right is, I was struggling with it for a long, long time. There was a point in which I had to actually stop for maybe 4 or 5 days, when I was just looking at it going, I don't know what's wrong with it. I can't figure out what's wrong with it. And I think there were many times in which I was asking Thoth, probably right at this moment, what to do with it, what was wrong with it, what needed to be fixed. And I just couldn't figure it out. So there were many, many times with this piece in which I felt like I wasn't going to get it right, that it was all wrong, that I didn't know what to do with it, and I there was one point in which I threw all of my paint things on the floor and stalked off to bed because I was just so frustrated with how it was not looking right. And as you can see, I just kept working on it because I didn't know what was wrong with it. And but I could tell something was wrong. So the image on the left took maybe 4 days to do, and then the image on the right took I feel like it took maybe a week and a half, if not 2 weeks. And including me stopping working on it for quite a while in order to figure out what the hell was wrong with it. And I'm really hard on myself, and I'm quite a perfectionist in regards to painting. And I'm not the kind of person who's going to give up on something. I'm going to get it right. And so I'd say I'm more proud of this painting than any of the other ones I've done because at one point it just didn't look right for quite a long time, and I just didn't know what the hell to do with it, and I eventually figured it out and got it looking the way I wanted it to. And this is all intuitive. I'm not a trained painter, I'm not a trained artist. No one tells me or has shown me how to paint or how to draw. It's all just been intuitively looking at references, experimenting, doodling, trying things out, seeing how it goes, moving things around, and no one told me how to do this. And so I'm still at this point where I know that the perspective is wrong, but I just don't know what to do. And it was just a huge amount of frustration because I think at one point I had Thoth come over and look at it and just tell me what is it that I need to change about it. And I think at this point it was the face on the right just did not look right. It just looked wonky, and the jawline was off, the mouth was in the wrong position, the nose was too short, the eye looked weird. It just didn't look right, and I was pissed at myself and just not happy with how it was looking. And this had been about maybe 2 weeks into the painting process, and it was still not looking right. So, I'm still hacking away at it for hours and hours and hours trying to get it to look right and but I wasn't willing to completely erase it because I didn't know what to do or where else to put the nose and the mouth. But at one point, this is probably 2 weeks in or so, maybe 2.5 weeks, where I finally understood what was going wrong, and I was able to get rid of both the nose and the mouth and move it all down a bit. And it finally started to look right because this face on the right is tilted up just slightly, and so the nose is more protruding and the mouth is more protruding than the eyes and the head. And that's definitely, I mean, here at this moment it's starting to look right to me. And I can't just let things go and let it look shitty or let it look wrong. I have to get it into the right space in order to feel good about it. And that jawline is too, it's just looks weird. And then I had to move the head on the left back a little bit, and then I needed to move the face to the right, forward, back a little bit. It's quite a process, and it took me a good 2.5 weeks to probably get to this point where the faces looked better and actually looked proportionally correct. And I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that process to take that long, and especially with doing two different faces. Um, so, like I said, I've never done this in my life. And here I'm finally able to start having fun with it because I felt good about everything looking proper. And I looked at a couple references for inspiration, but then I just decided to kind of paint these really weird abstract hair things, and I really like how it turned out. This one on the left, particularly, I was just really am proud of. I love the colors. I love how everything blends together. I um, I just love I love the facial expression. I love how the eye is peeking out over the eyelashes. I loved blending the um, experimental hair aspect into the head itself. That was a quite a process, and this at this point I was having a lot more fun, so to speak, because I wasn't being so anal retentive and perfectionist about it. I was just having fun with it, and that image on the left was really starting to look quite spectacular, and I was very proud of it. And the whole process for this painting was about trying to make each of the images look as good as I could and as proportionally correct as I could, while also being really abstract and experimental with them as well. And it took a lot longer than I thought it would, and I was surprised by how I was able to get through the challenges that I faced with each one of the images to make the images look like they worked together, and it kind of looks like maybe they're talking to each other, they're having some kind of mystical conversation about something. Here I am trying to make it even more abstract by adding more eyeballs, and I think I decided I didn't want to pursue that so much. And then I started on the earrings, and I think the earrings on both of the faces took about a week in and of themselves to do, and they were challenging in their own ways. This earring here I had a reference, you can kind of see it in the left corner, and it's very shiny because earrings are reflective, and this was a experience of trying to make a shiny surface, which I'd never done in my life. So, but I ended up really, really loving this earring and being very proud of the uh, how interestingly, experimentally strange and realistic it looks to a certain extent. And playing with all of the colors and trying to get the colors right, because I'm looking at this reference, but I'm also doing it my own way. And I the goal is that the reference is inspiration for the piece. For all of the pieces I've done so far, I've not really used many references. I've just done a lot from imagination, and it's a very different experience to paint using a reference as opposed to just doing it experimentally from imagination. And I try to create a balance of both. I always have with my drawing process that sometimes I'll use references and try to create the image as close to the reference as I can, while also it being my own image, which is difficult in and of itself, and then also just doing things from imagination. So with this piece, I'm using references for the faces, but I'm also creating it to be totally my own images and my own abstract, surreal, um, trippy art thing that all my pieces always end up looking like anyway, no matter what I do. Um, I just think I have some kind of really when I'm painting, I definitely find that I'm trying to create my own world. This is how I imagine myself actually looking. Um, this is how I would imagine people looking in my own world, I guess. And for me, it's really nourishing for my soul to be able to create an image in my head that's there for other people to see. Like, this is how I see the world. And the more pieces I create, the more I'm able to create that world for myself. And just these earrings alone, like I said, they took a lot longer than I thought they would. But having access to references, I'm not exactly copying the reference that I'm looking at, but when I have that reference available, then I am able to look at it, and it gives me a lot more confidence with creating the image, because I wouldn't know how to paint earrings from my imagination. I wouldn't know how to paint a face from my imagination, or eyes, or no matter how many times I've drawn faces or earrings or eyes or hands or feet or ears or hands or anything. It's I having references to try and create the image as realistically as I can. So this is like a surreal, realistic, those are faces. Like you can actually see them as real faces, but they're not human. They're like sort of human, or they're, I don't know, maybe they're aliens or something. I don't know. At this point, the piece felt quite completed. This was just a whole process of adding details, which of course took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. But I had a lot of fun. I enjoy detail work. Details are my favorite part of drawing or painting. And with these earrings, I got to really indulge in that process of making a lot of cool and quirky details in the earrings. These are, for example, these are things that I would love to create myself. I would love to create earrings like this. And it's really fun to have this idea in my head, have a reference to look at, and then create it there in front of my own eyes. It's I can't really describe how that feels. Like this earring was so fun to do. The earring, this earring on the right was probably my favorite part of the whole painting process, because it was really imaginative, and I got to do a lot of experimenting and trying new things. And then the earring, that earring I'm working on now, I had to move it around because the little gems were a bit too big for my liking, and I had to make them smaller, which is its own process in and of itself to correct a painting. That's something I've only started learning how to do, and I'm learning with painting that nothing is in stone. That when you create a certain shape or image, that you can move it around and change it as you please. And that's given me a lot more confidence with the painting process, because I know that I just need to start, I just need to do something, and then I'll see where it should be and how it needs to actually sit in the painting, and then I can move it around and make it look the way I want it to. So at this point, I'm doing the last earring, and which was challenging in and of itself because I didn't have a reference really. I was just doing it from my imagination, and I'm so pleased with this piece. It's I don't know what's going on. It's two little alien creatures having a secret conversation of some kind, and very beautiful and my own style for sure. And I'm so proud of having not the process for me was all about not giving up and not surrendering to the process and trusting it, but not giving up on it, and keep going, and trust myself and trust my ability. Thank you so much for watching.